I don't know about all of you, but I feel like it's been a rough couple of weeks in our world. Our news has been filled with possibilities and predictions for a future as yet unknown, but quite possibly terrifying. There's the daily, sometimes hourly reports of the spread of COVID-19, this new virus that is either going to kill us all or just cause a temporary shortage of hand sanitizer, depending on who you listen to. And there's the acceleration of our presidential primaries, reminding us that November elections aren't that far away. At this point, the results of that election are as unknown as the next stage of the virus, and potentially just as deadly. I have felt fear these past few weeks, fear as I wash my hands again and again until my knuckles turn raw and red. Fear as I read another analysis of our upcoming election. Fear as I wonder, is this what it looks like, the beginning of the end? I told Tristan the other day that I'd like to just skip over March entirely if I could. Maybe just take a really long nap and hope that when I emerge in April, the world will, perhaps, have sorted itself out. Living with all these unknowns is hard, though it is nothing new for us. Every day we make choices not knowing where they will lead us. Every day the world moves around us, sometimes making our choices for us, often in unpredictable ways. And yet, we continue to live. We plan for a future that may not exist. We bring children into a world that we may be in the process of destroying. We knock doors and send texts and donate money for candidates who may never make it past the first week of March. We continue to live and plan and make choices for our future because we must. Somehow we keep going, knowing that giving up isn't one of the options. It's times like this that make me wish I could channel the equanimity of that farmer in our Wonderbox story. That story, as Robin told us, is an old Taoist tale. Taoism is a Chinese philosophy that emphasizes living in harmony with the Tao, often translated as the way. The Tao represents the movement of the world, the unplanned and uncontrollable rhythms of the universe. That farmer in our Wonderbox story was acting in a classic Taoist fashion, living in the moment, not passing judgment, seeing where life took him next. His constant refrain of good luck, bad luck, too soon to tell, was a way of living in harmony with the Tao, surrendering to the unplanned and unknowable movements of the world. There's great wisdom in this story and in that Taoist notion of living in the moment. After all, we can't know what the future will bring. We can't know if what looks like good luck today will still look like good luck tomorrow. No matter what choices we make, no matter how much we try to stay in control, we are ultimately all subject to the unplanned movements of our universe. And so there's wisdom in acknowledging that, in living in the here and now, in appreciating what you've got in this moment, not knowing what the next moment might bring, and not minding that you don't know. Buddhist teacher Pema Chodron offers similar advice in her book, When Things Fall Apart. She writes, "Letting there be room for not knowing is the most important thing of all. When there's big disappointment, we don't know if that's the end of the story. It may just be the beginning of a great adventure. Life is like that. We don't know anything, she says. We call something bad, we call it good, but really we just don't know. There's so much wisdom in this approach, and I think that's a large part of why mindfulness practices have become so popular. We have this collective sense among us that we should be living in the moment more. And these practices help us to do that, even for just a few minutes at a time. We focus on our breath, our body, on the person in front of us. We notice the details of our surroundings, of the sensations in us and around us. We let go of past choices and of future consequences, and we simply exist. I know that when I'm able to do this, even for just a few moments, it grounds me. Living in the moment is good for us. But let's be honest, for many of us, it's really hard. Because we do think about the future and about the past. We weigh our past choices, we ponder our future consequences, we plan for various outcomes. Living in the moment does not seem to be our default mode. And I've always been skeptical that living in this way, every moment really makes sense. Looking back and looking forward is also valuable. We gain wisdom from considering our choices in the past and learning from them. We grow by trying new things, reflecting on how they went, and trying again. So I was somewhat relieved to find an article in the New York Times by Martin Seligman and John Tierney called, "We Aren't Built to Live in the Moment." It's nice when someone else says what you're thinking. Seligman is a psychologist who writes about the concept of Homo prospectus. He argues that the scientific name for humans, Homo sapiens, which means wise man, is a misnomer, more of a boast than an accurate description of what we are. According to Seligman, the thing that sets us apart from other creatures is actually that we contemplate the future. This consideration of the future is where our civilization came from. It's what propels society forward, says Seligman. Therefore, he suggests a new name for our species, Homo prospectus, because we thrive by considering our prospects. The power of prospection is what makes us wise. Interestingly, it is true that we are one of the few species that actually actively thinks about the future. You might think that those squirrels out collecting acorns in the fall are thinking ahead to the winter, but their actions are only instincts. And all those ants working together to build anthills are also acting on instinct, not because they sat down and agreed on a plan. Even our close relatives, the chimpanzees, can only think about the very immediate future, the space of an hour or maybe a day, rather than months and years. We humans, on the other hand, are constantly thinking about the future, even when we are not fully aware that is what we are doing. We're more like the character in that Robert Frost poem that Bob read for us, deliberately considering which path to choose, than we are like the farmer, letting the world wash over us without judgment. Even memory is linked more towards thinking to the future than dwelling on the past. We learn from our memories and are able to use them to affect our future behavior and responses. Seligman points to child development as an example of this. Children can't imagine future scenarios until they are able to recall their own past experiences, somewhere between the ages of 3 and 5. But once we've learned this skill, it seems to become our default mode. Think about what happens when your mind wanders off when you're in the midst of a task. Usually, it's to imagine various futures. This orientation towards the future may be what makes us human, but it's got its pluses and minuses. Planning for the future is great, and we know that it also keeps us from that Taoist ideal of living in the moment, taking the ebbs and flows of life as they come without judgment. There are some times that I wish I was more like a squirrel, making preparations by instinct rather than having to ponder the unknown future and try to make choices based on all of the various scenarios for how things may play out. These last few weeks are one of those times. The many what-ifs are overwhelming, and being able to play out all those scenarios in my head is only a recipe for losing sleep. The thing is, we're not squirrels. We are hardwired to ponder the future. And at the same time, we benefit from living in the moment. There's wisdom in both of these ways of being. There's wisdom of letting go of the things that you cannot change, acknowledging that you don't have control over the world. And there's wisdom in learning from your past experiences and using that learning to shape your future. As with so many things, the ideal way for us to live is likely somewhere in the middle of those two. We can't always just let life happen to us, experiencing the moment and not thinking about any future consequences. But we also can't be constantly thinking about the future, trying to control everything and plan for every possible outcome. We have to come down somewhere in between. There's a lot about this new virus that we can't control, but we are not powerless. We can take care of ourselves and each other. We can wash our hands, stay home when we're sick, turn handshakes into fist bumps, and check in on the people we care about. And we can let go of our ability to control and predict all outcomes, taking each day as it comes. There's a lot about the upcoming presidential election that we cannot control. But we are not powerless. We can make phone calls and send texts, knock on doors and give money, and of course, get out and vote. And we can acknowledge that we don't know where it will all end up, and that obsessing over each new poll probably won't do us any good. The future is unplanned and unpredictable. The rhythms of the universe are uncontrollable, but we are not powerless. We can use what we know from our past to shape our future. We can learn from each other, grow in our understanding and our ability to affect our future. And we can remember that to take a moment sometimes to just sit and be. To recognize that it is too soon to tell where life is going to take us next. And so in this unpredictable time, I invite us to remember the wisdom of Reinhold Niebuhr in his famous Serenity Prayer. Grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. May it be so.